Heathens, we have an auspicious opportunity today. Gathered here live in Austin, we have some of the greatest thinkers in secular humanism. And we're going to do something a little interesting today. I'm going to pick their brains and try and steelman the Bible for its accuracy and divinity. So starting us off, Christy Powell. Have you got a story for us?
Yeah, well, so actually there's this really great story in Mark chapter 5. It's actually the origin of that famous quote, "My name is Legion, for we are many," where Jesus drives this demon, or actually there's like a whole legion of demons, I guess, in all living in this one dude.
Two men.
Wait, what are you saying?
It's two men.
No, it's definitely one man. It says so in Luke 8:27 also.
I have this fancy internet Bible thing. I'm looking at it right now. Matthew 8:28. It's very clear on the fact that there were two demon-possessed men.
Okay, fine. Bad example. Maybe you've got something a little bit more concrete for us, Mike.
Yeah, of course, Matthew 27. So you guys know one of the most important people in the story of Jesus is the man that betrayed him, Judas.
Sure.
And it's important to note that his guilt in Matthew chapter 27, he throws his silver into the temple and hangs himself.
Yeah, but no, he actually fell and was disemboweled. He spent that silver on a field, and then he fell, and all of his guts spilled out. It says so very clearly in Acts 1:18.
Okay, fine. Another bad example, but we can be very clear that the Bible has strong thoughts and messages on certain topics like incest. In both Leviticus 20:17 and Deuteronomy 27:22, it's very clear that it is wicked to sleep with your sister.
Yeah, except that it's fine in Genesis 19:33 and 34, where Lot's daughters get him drunk and then lay with him.
Hold on. But God blessed the progeny of incest. In Genesis 17:15 through 16, he blesses Abraham's wife, Sarah, so that she'll give him a son, even though we learn later in the same book, chapter 20, verse 12, they have the same father.
Fine. I guess we've learned nothing here, except that the Bible is wildly inconsistent in both message and theme. But if you think, oh, theist and believer, you can explain why this apparently imperfect book is in fact perfect and divine, you should call the show, because it's starting now.
All right, well, welcome everyone. Today is August 25th, 2024. It is Bat Cruise weekend for the Atheist Community of Austin. I am your host, Christy Powell. Joining me today is Jamie the Blind Limey and Jmike. Make sure to stay tuned because we'll be bringing in Forrest Valkai and Jimmy Jr. And today we are live from the Free Thought Library. Let's see that incredible live studio audience. All those good-looking people.
Beautiful bloody people.
Yeah, you know, I love that we now have this kind of like international reach where we can do everything online and we can have people from all over the world volunteer and I get to meet all kinds of people, and that we still have this like very special local event where I can see folks like you.
Yeah.
Jmike, thank you for flying in. Like everybody who
course.
gets to be here live in person. It's a great time. I've been so glad we've been able to do this.
No, yeah, it's overwhelming. I'm like very socially awkward, so it's like something I really enjoy to like meet everybody. I'm also like, okay, this is a giant test for myself as like a person.
Save up all that social energy and spend it all in one weekend.
So, but I'm getting better. I think I'm getting better. Yeah. So if I've been awkward at anybody, it's just been like, yeah, I'm so awkward. You probably know why now. So.
that's just the regular servant. Yeah. Well, let me tell you that Talk Heathen is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, to critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. Talk Heathen is a live call-in show, and we have open lines. So get your calls in. We're at 512-991-9242 or from your computer at tiny.cc/callth. And now, the question of the week. Talk Heathen to me. Last week, we asked you, the audience, to complete this sentence. It only took blank to anger God. And here are our top three answers. Our number 3 favorite answer came from James Larimer, who told us that it only takes a foreskin to anger God. He really doesn't like them.
The forbidden calamari.
So, like, why put them there in the first place? No.
Why did he?
No.
He's done this.
Why did you say that,
He does it all
Jamie?
weekend. He has these like crazy quips that come out of nowhere, like before the show. Like he did that one.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. All right, if I can at all get back to my line of thinking, our number 2 favorite answer came from Ironclad Alibi, who said, complete the sentence, it only takes looking at another god to anger God. The one and only true God, or something.
Brahma looking real fine about now. Sorry, Yahweh.
And our number 1 favorite answer came from Miranda Rensberger, who said, it only takes picking up sticks on the wrong day to anger God, which is a pretty damn fair point.
Yeah, that is one of the craziest things about fundamentalist Judaism, Hasidic Jews, where they have special modes on their appliances to make sure they don't work on the Sabbath. It's amazing.
Yeah, which is absolutely wild to me growing up. Yeah, well, and then growing up as an evangelical, we were very like, of course we're going to absolutely follow all of the rules, but we didn't actually know or understand or be bothered to learn any of those. You know, some of the other ones, absolutely, you should definitely not have a tattoo or get a divorce, like ever. But this other stuff, we're like, no, it doesn't quite make sense. Make any of it make sense, please give us a call. Lines are open. And in the meantime, our prompt for next week is, what's a lyric that you wouldn't expect in Christian music? That is actually one I'm very curious about. Do y'all have a good answer for that? What is a lyric that you might not expect to hear in a Stephen Curtis Chapman song?
I'm on a highway to hell.
Mine's cliche, but but maybe it rings more true than what's stated. But like, our God is an awful God.
Yeah, well, you know. Here from heaven. Sorry to anybody who now has that stuck in their head for the rest of the day. But let's take a moment before we jump into all of our calls to say thank you to the incredible people who are not just putting this show together and keeping the organization running, but that in particular have put together an incredible back cruise. We had a wonderful experience last night. I hope you can make it out next year. We've had so many wonderful people working so hard. So thank you to our incredible crew. Let's get them up on the screen if we can. All of the people working hard to make this show look good, making the organization look good. Absolutely so thankful for all of y'all's hard work.
Making us look tolerable.
Yeah.
Hey, Richard, I see you.
And with all of that, let's do the damn thing. Why are we here? We are here to take your calls. We are here to understand what it is that you believe and why you believe it. And we're going to start today by talking to Benjamin in Alabama. Benjamin, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, I kind of got put on the spot. I called in last week. Secularity told me to call in and ask, why did God have slaves in the first place? I'm the guy, I don't know if y'all watched it or not, but I'm the guy that called in and defended slavery. And I was really hoping to talk to Matt, because Matt's the main one that gets offended about it. But
Matt's not
I mean,
here.
I think I'm just going to go ahead and say, is it okay if I speak for you, gentlemen?
Go for it.
We're all sort of offended by the notion of slavery.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things. We might have some disagreements on a couple of things. We argue about what goes on pizzas and things.
Yeah.
But we do just broadly feel like slavery is a bad. And I guess I'm really curious not to necessarily rehash an argument or a conversation that you had on air with the host last week, but rather to ask you, like, I don't know, maybe God isn't a good guy? Like, is that a reasonable assumption that somebody who would be in favor of slavery? Talk to me about it. Please.
yeah, I was going to get into that. So my belief system is actually a really old belief system. So are you familiar with limbo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly for the audience, we are talking broadly about the old Catholic notion of not necessarily being punished for your sins, but also not being able to be rewarded. And so you have to kind of wait in this liminal space for some undetermined amount of time until you maybe work off your sins. Am I more or less in line with what you're expressing by that idea?
Half and half. So going into a realm that looks like ours, but you're dead, and as a spirit, and you're trapped there for basically forever. You don't go to heaven or hell. It's But so I believe in limbo, heaven, and hell. I also have had near-death experiences and spoken directly to God.
Okay, so that's three big things right there that we could chew on all day. That you believe in heaven, hell, and limbo. That you have spoken to God directly, and that you've had a near-death experience. We could dive into any of those, but each of those is an individual claim. That's the what you believe. Why don't you pick one and tell us why, if you would?
Well, the limbo, I've been there, and then heaven and hell, I just believe just to be.
Well, I've got to stop you right there, Benjamin. Benjamin. You just said if you go to limbo, you're there forever, but you've been there and come back.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't make any sense.
It's literally a
Fill in those gaps.
It's literally a contradiction. It's the case that you're there forever, and it's not the case that you're there forever. It's just a direct, like, X and not X.
Well, I was close to death. I had a near-death experience. I was medically dead, and then I came back. So.
But you can't. But you're there forever. Okay. All right. Well, I don't think we should spend time on that part.
Yeah, I mean, that's a personal experience, and we are bound to believe that you feel you had that experience, but unless you can evidence that that's the actual case to us in some way that we can observe and interact with, you're going to have trouble convincing us. Also, I've had several surgeries myself. Sorry?
I don't have the ability to prove that to y'all.
Okay.
That's fine. Why don't we just not do that and instead, like, because, Christy had said, this doesn't seem like a very good dude. Hold on, real quick. Hold on. It just doesn't seem like a very good, real quick. This doesn't seem like a very good God, right? And you even called in, the call screener says, talking about God being evil. So, like, why don't we just hone in on that for a moment, since you called in about the slavery stuff? Because, like, this limbo stuff, I do really bad. I get, like, really bad anxiety when it's just, like, left, right, this way, that way. I just have to, like, be focused on one thing. So if we can focus on, and if you're already saying you can't prove this to us or anything like that, that's fine. Let's work inside of your framework, like internally, okay? So what do you think, do you think, like, let's imagine like a superhero, okay? This is like this superhero, he's like flying around and he sees like all of these people being raped, stabbed, right? What's the expectation of a good superhero? Do you think that knowing that they could prevent those evils as they fly by, do you think it would be an expectation that they would go help, or do you think that they wouldn't? What's your notion of like a good superhero? Let's start there.
Well, I know a good superhero would try to help, but the way that God kind of looks at things is he lets it play out and kind of screws people over, really.
Okay, so
God screws people over. Does that make him a good God?
Yes, exactly.
No. I have a bit of a Gnostic belief as well.
Okay.
My belief system's pretty old. So I don't think God is all good. I think there's some bad there, too. Okay. Which is what I said last week.
Okay.
But, like, flooding the earth and killing everybody and killing babies and making pledges and all. And even if, like, because I know some Christians would say, oh, well, that was the devil, Lucifer, whatever. I don't think that, because Lucifer is only able to do what God allows him to do in the first place. Yeah. So if God's allowing it, then it's God's fault anyway.
If I can, like, I can't really do the fan fiction stuff. It like you lose me rapidly. So what's your view? Is your view that like you agree God is evil, and so you're presumably you don't accept like these types of omni properties, right? So. But you're defending slavery in the last call, so I'm not really understanding, like, do you think slavery is wrong, but you just, like, you basically, is your view like God, hold on, is your view like God is like this mafioso, like, kind of figure with the biggest stick, and we should just listen to the guy with the biggest stick? Is that the view? Because that's, like, really all I'm hearing if you're defending slavery, and you're like, yeah, I think he's also a piece of shit. I'm just trying to understand your view. It seems odd.
Yeah, so that is pretty funny. But I think that in my call before, I made a point that it helped the economy, and then somebody countered with the cost outweigh the pros. The cons outweigh the pros.
So yeah, Benjamin, it was me that you spoke to.
Yeah.
And so you acknowledged when we talked that you didn't think.
I thought you sounded familiar.
Yeah, you didn't think that God was good. You tried to give the economy as an example, and I gave the counter example that yes, slavery was great for the economy. So was the British Empire conquering the world and killing millions of people doing it. Doesn't make it moral, doesn't make it right. It's not a justification. We went through all of that, and Benjamin, and then the final question was, why would you worship or believe in such a God? And you said you don't worship him, but you do believe in him. And my answer to that was, I hope you're wrong. That guy's a monster. Are you just and here's my final question to you, Ben. Do you prefer an evil guidance to the thought of actual randomness? The fact that the universe is just a natural place where bad and good things happen?
Well, I would prefer there to be something after death. I mean, I do believe in something after death, but as far as God goes, I don't know really what to think. I don't know if it's better to have a God, even if that God is somewhat evil. I know that throughout history, there's been tons of different religions and gods, all with their own characteristics, and then that kind of shapes culture and society and all that good stuff.
And what I would say, sir, I know from our previous conversations that you're actually a reasonable and quite moral person. And I would hope that throughout these conversations that we've had, that you can start to let go of that fear of the unknown and start to realize that we have this life. We can't guarantee there's anything past it. We don't know whether the bad people are going to get justice or the good people are going to get rewarded. So try and make the best of what you've got right now, because all of this fear you're carrying, all of this hope that there's something more beyond the end of your life is actually going to be weighing you down right now. So if you take anything from these conversations we've had, realize your own worth as a moral being. It's better than the God you believe in, and it would be better for you if you could work your way through that belief.
Well,
how does that sit with you, Benjamin?
For me, it's
yeah.
Huh?
No, I'm interested in how you react to all that. How does that sit with you? Please go ahead.
Oh yeah. So I think that that's a good point. I don't think it's necessarily that I'm afraid of the unknown. But I would rather believe in an afterlife than just think that once I'm dead, I'm dead.
Okay. I mean, it's okay to want to believe in the afterlife. I want to believe that I'm going to win the lottery this week, but I don't live my life based on the idea that I will, because I don't have any real reason to think that it's likely. Talk to me about your belief in an afterlife. How does it benefit you to believe that it is possible? Why would you believe that it's possible?
Well, I'll say this. I'm really old. I've been around for a long time.
Sure.
And in fact, I forgot how old I am. I've been around so long. So, but I've outlived a lot of my family. A lot of my friends are grandpas and stuff now, and I knew them when they was teenagers. And I'm still just here. Same place. I've been living in the same town for 40 years. And so I grew up with in the 70s and 80s. But again, I don't know exactly when I was born, because I stopped counting my birthdays a long time ago.
Yeah, well, so you haven't said this, Benjamin, but if I'm understanding you, what you're telling me is that it brings you comfort to believe that there is an afterlife, that you will die and then have an opportunity to continue, or perhaps that the people who have died before you will have an opportunity to reconnect with you after you die. And even if you don't necessarily have any evidence for that or any reason to believe that, the reason, in so much as you have one, is that it does make you feel better. Yeah. It makes you feel more comfortable or perhaps less afraid. Is that a true rendering of what you're saying here? Because I don't want to mischaracterize what you have said.
Yeah, I would say more comfortable. I wouldn't say afraid. But
do you understand, though, like, appeals to those types of consequences or emotion is, like, I don't know, this might not be something that you're interested in, but, like, if you want to go for some pursuit of truth, one of the easiest ways to fool yourself is to appeal to these types of considerations on consequence. So like some people might like look at determinism and go, well, what about moral responsibility? And then, they kind of push it to the side because they don't like the taste that's left in their mouth, which is just not like a good way to navigate the world. Like I could walk around all day thinking everybody I meet just thinks I'm awesome and sexy and they want to be with me. And like, it just seems like the most unhealthy way I could walk around the earth. I don't know, maybe if it gave me comfort or whatever, but like there's no way that could be healthy to just, sidestep something that could be true, especially when you're in a world of like NFT, crypto scam stuff, and people are trying to rug pull you at any chance that they can get, buy this coin or whatever, buy Jmike coin, not a real coin, right? And it's just a giant like rug pull. But if you don't have this proper, the proper tool set to help distinguish between some con man, or the drunk guy at the bar, it just seems like you're gonna miss out on a lot of stuff that to me makes me really happy. I wake up every day, even if it's something I'm like, oh, I wouldn't like that to be true, but I feel better like reading about it or knowing about it and being like, okay, well, before I'm gone, I know a little bit more about the world around me than I did before. And that's way cooler to me than like telling myself something that's clearly false about it, right? I don't know if that impacts you at all. I worry that it's inevitably going to come back to this some book says a thing consideration. And I don't know, I guess I worry about that.
No, so if you're talking about forgiveness, right? So my belief system, I don't think so. It depends because like a lot of people would say, well, if you do bad things, you can just ask for forgiveness and you get a clean slate. I don't think it works that way because I think that it's kind of. Are you familiar with Anubis?
Well, yeah, but I'm not really. That's not really where my concern is. My concern is not on them. My concern is just on like, if you don't actually have this tool set to help differentiate, between truth or something that just makes you feel comfortable, it might make you feel really comfortable when someone offers you like, hey, this get rich, quick scheme that makes you feel really good. Like, oh, it's going to cover my bills. And then you're in more debt. And had you had just taken the right route of like, okay, what's independent of like, my opinions, what makes me feel good. If I can separate that, create this like skeptic on my shoulder that's constantly like pushing back on myself. If you can do that, I just feel like you're going to have an easier time in life. But the others, like the afterlife stuff, I'm not really concerned about in this conversation. So that stuff doesn't really interest me as much. Not that it's not interesting. I just want to keep focused.
I think it more just kind of gets down to, does it matter that it's true?
Yeah, exactly.
You're saying that perhaps or we've discussed the idea maybe that it brings you some comfort to believe in an afterlife. Okay, it's fine if you take some comfort in that. I would hope that you would keep it in perspective, though, because what Jmike is really presenting to you is that there is reason to believe that it's not accurate, and I don't necessarily hear you, Benjamin, overly concerned with that idea. Like, is it a problem for you that it's likely not accurate, or at least that we don't really have a good reason to think that it's accurate? Does truth matter?
Well, I'll say this. I'm not going to die for a really long time.
So say we all.
But, I'll say this. In the end, because, to me, everything is temporary. I've outlived everybody I've ever known. And so, to me, relationships, I'll give you a good example. Friendships that I've had in relationships, to me, are temporary. Because at the end, they all move away, they die, I lose them. And there's even a relationship that I'm in now with somebody that I've known for 20 years since they was a little kid. And they're already grown, and to me, it was like yesterday. I can look back and remember stuff from 20 years ago like it was yesterday.
Don't you think that's better, though, to, like, have that finite expiration? Like, I don't know, like, what it would mean for me. And maybe I'm just going on a rant here, but, like, this has been on my mind. It's like, when I left for Austin, like, I was going to miss my pets. I got, like, on the ground, because you have a cat, like, you're submissive to where they are at that time. So I got down on the ground and was, like, very lovey with my cat. I'm going to miss you and all that. But if I just knew, like, this cat's always going to be here all the time, Like, I wouldn't even fucking bother being like, bye, love you. Like, it would just be out the door, right? It would be no point. It just doesn't really like, mean anything, you know? And, you know, we do this with our cars. Like, you know, oh, what's the point? Like, it's going to end up in a landfill. It's like, well, you need to get to your destination now, so you should change your oil, change your brakes. Like, it doesn't matter that, it's going to end up in a landfill. And I feel like when you put those together, it's like, I really struggle to see why people get bummed out about this kind of consideration on, like, you know, do we go on forever? And this seems to like give them comfort, but I get immense comfort knowing that what that finite time does is provide real value to me, to the things that I love, because I'm not going to have forever to tell them that I love them. And it's the reason why I'm going to go out and call my loved ones and tell them that, you know, or text them or whatever, you know, if, you know, I'm not the best at communication, I will admit, but, you know.
So I do say, you know, as far as that goes, I do show people that I love them, and I do build relationships. It's just, it only lasts so long, and then they're gone, and then I'm still here, you know? So it's like...
But that means something to you, though, right?
And to me, it's still temporary.
But it still means something to you. Yeah.
I mean, at the time, yeah, I mean... But it's just that at the end, they're gone, and I'm still here, so...
Sure.
That's why I was saying, like, I've outlived everybody, and then the people that I know now, they're grown and doing their own thing, and I knew them when they was kids, and there's people that I've known since, you know, like they was teenagers, and now they're grandpas, and so it's just complicated.
I hear that, and I recognize that life stacks up.
Yeah.
You know, every new relationship just sort of helps to inform and complicate every past relationship. And then they just keep happening. Life just keeps coming. And as you get more and more and more of it, your categories and your ability to sort of figure out, well, what does any of this mean, can get really complicated. And I can appreciate why there might be some comfort in imagining that it'll just keep on like this forever, because that's what you've known, and that's what you've known for a long time. I think, if I may, what Jmike is suggesting here is that it's really worth asking the question, why would you believe that? Beyond, hey, it feels kind of nice. And also, what are the possible losses? What are the things that might hurt you by choosing to believe something without good evidence? And Benjamin, I think I would really just encourage you to ask yourself, why is it that you believe something that we don't really have good evidence for? Why is it that you would hold on to these seemingly contradictory beliefs? Like, for instance, you know, limbo is a place that you can never leave, but also I visited there briefly. And to just really challenge yourself to be wondering, what is the, like, who benefits? Cui bono on some of these ideas that I hold on to? Does it make the world a better place? Does it make my life any better to believe something that doesn't necessarily have good evidence behind it? And if you do come to some conclusions, or maybe find some more supporting evidence, or just an argument to better explain some of these things, please reach out and let us know what your thinkings are. But beyond that, I want to maybe see if there's anything else you want to share before kind of letting these gentlemen wrap it up and perhaps moving on to another call.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got what I meant by temporary, right? Like, because the way that I look at it, everything's temporary, because I'm going to eventually outlive people that I know. And
some
people who know you will outlive you.
Yeah.
Let me give you a sort of paraphrase from a book I really like. There are certain types of pain that are good. There are those hot, sharp little pains that you hope you get when you realize you are standing in a moment of pure joy or mirth or triumph or completion, but you know that it can't last, but it'll be with you forever. That it is transitory, that it is temporary, that it will never happen again, makes it special. And to be lamenting that things are temporary, I think, is not a great way to go about things. And I've talked to you several times now, Benjamin. I want you to be as happy and as comfortable as possible, but I also want you to embrace the truth and not hide in happy fantasies. And that's my last word on it.
Yeah.
I just find it interesting that every game or movie or anything I watch, it gets really old after a while if you do it for enough hours.
Sure,
so
yeah.
I'm very confident in that the extended stay of just pure bliss for eternity, it would not really be very meaningful.
Yeah, get boring.
Doesn't graft onto anything that
Yeah.
we've ever experienced or could possibly understand, and certainly doesn't seem to make sense if we imagine the world works the way that we feel that it does. So, Benjamin, I really do appreciate your call. I hope that you will kind of let some of this sink in. Maybe notice, like Jmike was pointing out, what some of the big feelings are here and how some of these emotions might be impacted by some of these ideas. And after you kind of sit with some of that, maybe give us another try. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great weekend.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the slavery thing.
Hey,
Take
guys,
good care.
I'm so sorry. I just, Benjamin called me out at the beginning, and I just kind of wanted to own up to it. I totally shirked my responsibility last week and passed the buck to y'all. So, yeah, I guess first round's on me tonight.
Yeah,
But hey, Benjamin,
holding
call
that
us back. We're doing AXP a little bit later. So and Jmike will be on.
As somebody who told you was going to go out with you later, I'm holding you to that.
Our friend Secularity, letting you know about the Atheist Experience coming up right after this show. Well, and I also want to just take a quick moment to mention that we are excited about the return of our popular brick fundraiser. You can see them right here in front of us. After the overwhelming success of the first round, we are opening up another opportunity for you to leave your mark here on the building. You can purchase an engraved brick, contribute to the creation of a beautiful patio to showcase the heartfelt messages of our generous donors. Each brick will be inscribed with your personalized text, making it a lasting tribute to your support and to our organization. Join us to create a space to celebrate our community. And with that, how do y'all feel about speaking to Lise in Canada?
Okay.
All right. Lise, we are interested to hear what's on your mind today. Thanks so much for giving us a call.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us what's going on.
Okay. I just checking. So I'm an atheist, but I was wondering if I could ask your opinion on something. Like, I was wondering why, or what your opinion is on how, like, a religious people, how they can believe in all this irrational stuff, but otherwise in their everyday life, they're very rational beings. And it's like, what do you think is a motivator for people who are otherwise quite rational to hold on to these kind of magical stories that have no merit to them? Like, can I give you an example?
Sure. I know Christy's going to have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, I feel like I know what you mean, and I'll say as a therapist, kind of my whole job is asking people, well, why would you believe that? Well, why would you believe that? But please, Lise, share with us your example, and then I think we'll kind of tear into this philosophically a little bit more.
Oh, okay. So I grew up Roman Catholic in a very religious household. And it's Catholic belief that once I can't remember the name of it, but once the priest blesses the Eucharist during Mass, then in Catholic doctrine, it's literally seen as the body and blood of Christ. It's like not metaphorically, literally.
And you hear rumors about how there were blood tests being done and all of that, but yeah, I hear what you mean.
Right. But you wouldn't. But if you asked a Catholic after Mass, have you ever engaged in cannibalism? Like like that.
Yeah, I mean, people do absolutely believe some completely wild things. I definitely want to approach this with a little bit of a psychological lens, but before I kind of tear into the feelings of it, is there anything that y'all wanted to really just highlight?
The entire last call we just had was all about comfort.
Right.
Some people just find comfort in these beliefs and may not have very strong belief in them, but partaking of the Eucharist and being in that group and being in the in-group is so attractive that they're willing to just have a bit of the old cognitive dissonance about it. And then there's also the point of, especially with the religion, you're taught religion by your parents. So the people who taught you things that are absolutely true, like fire is hot and cars are dangerous and don't pet the nice doggy because that's a coyote. That's a Texas thing. They also say God's real. they say that this is real, with exactly the same emphasis and with the exact same lack of allowing you to question it. It's as immutable as a fact that fire will burn you, that God is real. And that's hard to shake. Like that's deep in there. So that's where I would come from, like indoctrination and in-group thinking, tribalism. Yeah,
and me and Jamie actually were talking about this exact thing. So I'm going to keep it short because I think Christy has probably the most value on this conversation. Mine is pretty much the same thing. It's you're taught this kind of chain of reasoning. And this is something I struggle with as someone who is not a Christian, like trying to remember when I'm sitting there like, you lasagna, like what is going on in that brain? Like why you agreed here and here and here and you can't see this conclusion? Like I can't freaking get it. And I'm sitting there like being rude in my head. And it's what I want to do is realize that these people like have been taught a certain way to think. And it's not like that you can see certain things like, you know, them teaching you these things that are very valuable. There are certain things that it clicks, there's rationality there. But once you get on these like deeper kind of questions, it's, I feel like, much easier to let that chain of reasoning that you've kind of adopted kick right in. And, you know, so I don't know that I have like the greatest analysis on that, but I would say, you know, that's going to be heavily influenced. And then plus it's really hard to like tell yourself once you realize something's wrong, like false, to go, oh, this is a more defensible position that I have now. This other one was like, I couldn't defend it. People don't usually celebrate changing beliefs. They like fear it. I think if people adopted maybe more of this attitude of like, oh shit, now I have a more defensible view. Fuck yeah, this is awesome. This is like, I could celebrate this. The other view I had was like not defensible at all.
Yeah, it's not like, oh no, I'm wrong. It's more like, oh yeah, I'm less wrong. I'm more right.
Yeah, but for like, you know, brevity and sake of time, I think Christy could elucidate on a lot of that stuff, so.
Yeah, how are you, has it coming so far, Lise? Like, are you having any questions? Is this sort of tracking?
I was going to say, like, my personal belief on it is of why people, well, I think it's partially just like emotional attachment to this idea. Like, logic, if they were to shut off the emotions, logic, and only analyze it logically, they probably might not have that belief. But I think the fact that humans we are emotional beings, and I think sometimes, like you said, you know, we learn this, for a lot of people anyway, we learn this from our parents, and in this stage of life where we're being nurtured and molded and shaped into who we become. And I think that those, you know, people will look back at nostalgia and say, oh, remember those days? And I think, like, there's the same feeling, I think. It's just that it's something that they have an emotional attachment to while they were being nurtured, I think.
I'll add one small thing that the logical thing, there's a lot of people, philosophers in particular, that have some really fucking crazy beliefs, and they know a shit ton about propositional logic. Figure that one out, because I can't figure that out. So we'll go from there.
No, fair point. I mean, you describe us as emotional creatures, and I think that is in many ways fair to say about humanity, but I might suggest that we are fundamentally emotional. It's not like our emotions are this sort of like unnecessary vestigial part of our thinking, rational, reasoning mind. We need our emotions. There's no idea where we can sort of separate out and, well, we should be more logical about this and we should just like remove all of our feelings. Anybody who tells you, and I'm kind of looking at you, a lot of my good friends and people I love in the atheist community, anybody who tells you that they're strictly logical and that they don't work emotionally is just somebody who's lying to 100%. You and lying to themselves
100%.
About the fact that they have big emotions.
Yeah, for sure.
Our feelings and our thoughts are not distinct. They are not separate. Our thoughts are really just like a culmination of a bunch of our feelings. There's not a biological dividing line between the two, and I think that's really important to recognize. And so when we talk about, well, why do religious people believe that, you know, the world could sit on the back of elephants, or that this grape juice could actually be blood? I realize that in those cases, it's very easy to sort of sit back and be like, whoa, like how could anybody possibly?
Yeah.
they're doing it for all the same reasons and for all of the same mechanisms that you would go out on that fourth date with somebody when the first two were pretty mediocre.
Yeah.
They're doing it for all the same reasons that you would tell yourself, no, I'll stick it out at this job because I'm sure it'll get better. For all of the same reasons that you root for a football team that is clearly not going to win the game. Like, I get that we can take it to these really extreme places, and when we talk about religion, we do see some absolutely vile things being sort of justified by this culture of groupthink and of abandoning wisdom and of abandoning rationality. And organizations like the ACA exist to try and put an end to some of that. But I really want to get away from this idea that somehow, like, there are rational people and then there are religious people.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't work that way. These irrationalities that we see in religion are really just different versions, maybe sometimes hyped up versions of the same day-to-day mistakes that all of us are
You gotta
making.
think, like, your rationality, at least in my view, a lot of your rationality is going to be dependent on the videos you've consumed, the books you've read, the people you grew up with, right? I don't like believe in like what I think a lot of like philosophers might like. There's this rationality criterion independent of like what anybody thinks. Like, we're humans, we're coming up with a lot of this stuff. We're trying to figure out the world, and it's hard to go up to somebody and be like, they're irrational because they don't know that like water is H2O or P2O or whatever you want to say, right? And so, you know, they might just be like a chemical ignoramus. They have no idea anything about chemistry, like, and you would have to update them. And so a lot of these people, we have to remember that they just might not had any of these tools. They might have consumed these videos like from Answers in Genesis or something that steers them a completely different way. And yeah, by our lights, that's irrational. But by their lights, they're, you know, just telling them, you know, that they're irrational isn't going to do much, because by their lights, they're rational.
Yeah.
And it's just better to kind of assess what's the consumption of material people have read while they're, you know, constructing their thoughts.
And the thing is, even if you are a rational person or you have rational arguments, as we believe we do, like, yes, I knew long before I volunteered to be in the ACA that my thoughts on God and the like were more rational than most, and based in like secular thought and things. But I've painted a target on my back because I was emotional about it. Like, I got angry with what I was seeing with religion in this country. And so I've stuck my head above the parapet. And some people would say that that's irrational. Why would you do that? It's because I feel strongly about it. You can't separate them.
Yeah, I totally agree. I didn't mean that. I hope I didn't convey the point as in saying that only religious people are and that everyone else is. I wasn't.
No.
I didn't convey it in that.
No, Christy was just speaking, and George speaking in kind of general, this kind of like theme we see from some people, right? That's why I assume you were taking.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Human's gone a human.
I mean, spend 5 minutes as a couples counselor and you'll identify immediately that the guy who says that he's very rational and logical and his wife is super emotional is just a guy who has a bunch of feelings that he himself does not know anything about and is not himself aware of. And I think that that is a important thing for us to be keeping in mind in this conversation. But as to the question of how could somebody who is otherwise a healthy human living a functional life, who is able to put on their own pants and go to work and be a person, how could they possibly believe some of these like really outlandish things that we see in scripture or in other places? There's not a single answer for any of that, but I think it's just important to remember that when an idea has been reinforced over and over and over by your parents, by your community, by your culture, by your reading, by your emotional experiences, by all of these things, time after time after time after time, you start to give a pass to a lot of different things. And when you're told over and over and over, don't question it, don't think about it, you have to go on faith, you have to believe in God, and believing in God has gotten me this far and has gotten me this life that's so good so far and everything feels pretty okay, and we just have to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, you can get to these absolutely ridiculous places, but you're not going about it through any mechanism that isn't common to man. that isn't something that the rest of us are doing in some other way every single day of our lives.
I was wondering if before I let you go, if I could tell you kind of a really short, funny story about the question I asked.
Yeah, well, let's hear that, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the next caller, please.
Oh, okay. So I did in university. I did a semester in the UK, and so while there was I guess you call it Easter break. It was 3 weeks, but Easter break is not 3 weeks in Canada. But anyway, I decided to tour the continent. So I saw bits of France, Germany, whatever. And in France, there's this town or small city called Lourdes, and it's supposedly the Virgin Mary. I don't know, was sighted at that city, and anyone who drinks water from there is, there's
the healing power of the Fountain of Lourdes.
Mm-hmm.
They say the water at that site is holy, and people will come from all across the world just to fill up water jugs of it because the legend is that people have been cured by this water just by drinking it. And so I went there because my mother's super Catholic. I thought, I'll just give her a small bottle of water.
Sure.
Whatever. And I'm looking at all these people that have huge suitcases of water that they're bringing that they're taking. And I almost said to the person, it's just water, right?
Yeah.
But I won't.
No, what an incredible racket. It is amazing when those stories start to get echoed over and over and over, and how people will just sort of confirm for one another and encourage one another until they just feel it's got to make sense, right? Because if it didn't make sense, then why would I have flown all the way to Europe with this suitcase just to carry back a bunch of plain old drinking water? Of course I wouldn't do that. So then it must be holy. It must be helpful.
Yeah. Also, insert 10-minute foaming rant from me about spirit medicine and alternative.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and the hucksterism and everything that goes into that for sure. But I very much appreciate your call and your, interest and willingness to understand and be compassionate towards people, even when, or maybe especially when, they believe these really ridiculous and often very harmful ideas. So thank you so much for spending part of your Sunday with us.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, well, you take care. Okay, well, guys, it's been a really great show so far. I've enjoyed having you all on. It was great being on the cruise last night and having a good time. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of these conversations that we have been having today really make me wonder why we do all of this work and what is the point of some of these things that we're doing. And weekends like this where I get to meet up with so many of the other volunteers and understand their stories and why all of this is important to them are such a big part of reminding me and encouraging me that there is a real world to be changed here. People come up to us and say thank you, and hey, you helped me through this, you helped me understand that, and it's a really incredible experience. So if you're thinking about volunteering, you can join good people oh my goodness, we've got Jimmy Jr. subbing in for Jamie the Blind Limey.
Oh yeah, I'm supposed to be gone, I guess. I feel like.
Are you all right? You didn't want to stay for the rest of the show?
Philosophical powers are draining.
What is happening?
A more dashing and charming man, with a degree and very smart about science.
We lost Jmike.
Yeah, okay, so just you and I can do the rest of the show. That works for me.
Yeah, so
Jamie and Jmike and Jimmy Jr. Oh my! It's Forrest Valkai!
Oh God. I thought that was going to be so much worse.
I shaved and went to grad school.
Good luck to the podcast viewers of this episode, but I'm now joined by Jimmy Jr. and Forrest Valkai. Excited to have you gentlemen here.
Oh,
happy to be out of there.
Yeah. Thanks for having me at the same table with you two giants. This is a humbling experience.
Not that tall.
Happily.
All right. Well, I believe you two need no further introduction. So if it's okay with you both, let's go ahead and jump into a conversation with Bill in Pennsylvania. Bill, tell us what's on your mind today.
Yeah, just a quick question about asexuality. I was actually in a meetup, an atheist meetup, and it was organized by a fellow, and he just casually mentioned during one of the meetings that he was asexual, and that's all he said. He didn't, my curiosity was piqued.
Sure.
It was my first experience with anybody. I'd heard of the term, I guess, but I just assumed that it was applied only to probably women who had been raped or traumatized in some way, that they had some adverse feeling about sexuality and themselves and everything. But that wasn't the case. He appeared robust and fine, healthy and everything else. And I never got to.
I'm glad you're clarifying that those things are not what asexuality is. So we can talk a little bit more about that. But can you tell me what it is you're questioning, or what is it that you're curious about or wanting to learn more about here?
What the hell is going on there? How can somebody be asexual? That's crazy. I can understand gay and transsexual and everything else, but you don't want to. Do these people have no sex drive? That's not the issue.
No.
I mean, it is and it isn't, right? Like, we can get into some of the nuance here. Let's recognize first and foremost that asexuality, like damn near everything in the human sciences, really almost anything in any sort of science, is going to exist in some ways on a broad spectrum. And so when we talk about asexuality, we do want to recognize and validate that there are, in fact, people who tell us about themselves that they have no interest in sexuality, they've never had an interest in sexuality, they have no sexual desire, and that's who they are. Those people are remarkably rare, and much more often you will hear from people who say that sex just has never interested them, or maybe they really want sex or want to be sexual because there's all this social pressure and it's part of our social institutions and there's good goddamn reason for them to want to be sexual, but they just don't have any interest. And then we go on and on and on and down the spectrum, and we see people who maybe have some occasional fleeting interest in sexuality, or maybe they only have interest in sexuality in sort of a like masturbatory or like physical sensation sense, but the idea of seeing a beautiful person and being attracted to them just doesn't really register. And then we can maybe talk about people who we might describe as demisexual and gray speck and some of these other terms that talk about folks who only experience sexual desire in like very narrow circumstances. But really, to tell you what's going on there, why are some people blonde? Why do some people have red hair? Why do some people have blue eyes? Why do some people like Brussels sprouts? There's a lot of different variety in humanity. And I think that's really the simplest, most straightforward explanation. I'll let these guys get into it a little bit more with you, Bill, but how does that sit with you right now?
So are you saying that it's not in any way pathological?
I am saying that unequivocally. It's not in any way pathological to identify or to be asexual. I will also acknowledge that there are people who have experiences of sexual trauma who then no longer enjoy engaging with their sexuality. Whether or not we describe these people as asexual is actually kind of an esoteric, complicated conversation, and we want to really have a wide and diverse community where we embrace accepting people and how they experience the world. But to answer that question very, very shortly, asexuality and trauma are not the same thing, and some people who experience trauma will then later experience some form of asexuality.
Yeah, I have a few friends that are ace, and like they still, for the most part, are interested in romantic relationships. I have I have one ace friend who just really isn't interested in any of this at all. And she just, doesn't have any interest in relationships or sexuality or anything like that. It's just the switch is off for her. And I have another friend who has had a girlfriend for a very long time, and he's just not interested in the sexual component of that relationship. But of course, he's still interested in romance, and he's still interested in dating and all these things. Like Christy was saying, it's a spectral thing. It just kind of relates to how one views sexuality. No, it's not pathological. It's just a part of the diversity of human sexuality, just like anything else. I also want to clarify, this is just kind of a throwaway thing that you said, but you're talking about all these other sexualities you'd heard. Being trans is not a sexuality. Don't lump that in with those. But like that's a totally different thing for another time.
Yeah, and Bill, I have to say, I think you got the right guy, especially with Christy being here to talk about this stuff. So I don't, and with Forrest, I don't know. I have so much to add. I just have a question for you. When you brought up your question, you got pretty emotional, a little worked up over it. It was kind of a huge surprise that you just can't understand. And I want to know, why do we care so much? Why is it that we have taken other people's sex lives and made them a point of curiosity in our own lives? And can't we just let them be? And so, Bill, why is it so important for you to understand what goes through a person's head or how they feel sexually?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I know it made me mad.
Well,
that's a very weird response.
How dare you? Well, I wasn't actually mad at him, just the situation that it made no sense to me. I had no experience with it. And I just figured, well, everybody's sexual.
I think the root of what Jimmy Jr. was saying is like, why does their sexuality impact you in literally any way? Are you trying to sleep with this person? Is this the problem? Is that you're confused about what you're doing?
No.
Okay, so then why does it matter?
Yeah, and is this just?
No, it doesn't.
Does it?
It just made me question my view of reality, I guess.
That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, learning about diversity should make us sort of question, well, hey, do I actually like this thing, or was I just told that I was supposed to? If that person over there actually thinks that, American Idol is stupid and boring, then maybe I don't have to hang out when all of my friends watch American Idol or RuPaul's Drag Race or whatever the hell the thing is. We're all allowed to like different things, and yeah, we do as a society, as a culture, like to sort of push and pressure each other. And what do you mean you're not watching House of the Dragon? Like, it's fine to like or to not like these things, and I get why that thought may not even occur to you on a certain level. But it also is sort of interesting to me that you're calling us and asking us this rather than, Googling what is asexuality or some of these other things. I think Jimmy was kind of... I hear that. I hear that, and I'm happy to explain it for you. Please don't hear me discouraging you from calling in to talk about these things or shame you for what you don't already know. I really apologize if that's at all how I came across, but only to, again, sort of underline the emotionality that Jimmy was maybe talking to here and how our society is really built on a certain amount of pressure to maintain the status quo, to maintain certain forms of groupthink. And, especially like looking across this table at us three able-bodied cisgendered men, there is a real pressure to be straight, to be masculine, to be manly. And part of that is so that we as men, as a class, can kind of maintain our stranglehold at the top of the heap. And so we as men often participate in sort of putting pressure on people to not be feminine, to not be gay, to not be trans or in any of these other forms of sexuality or orientation or forms of expression that might sort of threaten that patriarchal stranglehold that we have. Is that too much of a reach?
No, I think that's a really good point because, while I certainly am not trying to accuse you, Bill, of being a major player in the patriarchal hegemony that dominates Western society, and I'm not trying to give you that much issue, but it is important to point out that the emotion that you felt, what you described as anger, stemmed from this idea that, well, isn't everybody sexual? And especially, I think you said that the person you're talking about is a man, this idea that, well, why aren't you trying to have sex with something? That's what men do. You know what I mean? that's kind of a weird reaction to have to that. And maybe that's a chance for you now to go back and reflect, okay, why did I think that in the first place? No shame on you for thinking that. This is now a learning experience and a growing experience for you. Why was that my initial reaction? Why did I make that assumption about people? Why haven't I heard of this option of sexuality? And what has been taught to me and what has been withheld from me thus far in my life to leave me now in this position where I'm having this emotional reaction of something that is giving me enough cognitive dissonance to cause me to feel this way and have to call and talk to 3 cishet white guys about it. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of stuff there that you can really be digging into.
Would you guys say that the vast majority of asexual people are women, or is it?
I absolutely would.
no data.
I don't have a ton of data. I actually did want to point out that we did a really great job at covering this topic on secular sexuality, also an Atheist Community of Austin production.
Best show on the ACA.
Yeah, well, thank you. We had a number of interviews, in particular with Miss O'Kiss, where we really dove into some of this. And there are some very interesting implications to what very little data we do have, which I really want to stress. We have very little research on this form of sexual expression or this identity. And it does seem potentially that there are some interesting correlations with neurodivergence, that it does seem to be in some ways correlated with being genderqueer and in particular being assigned female at birth. But when we zoom out from that or look at it with any sort of skepticism, what we start to realize really quickly is that all of the people I just described are people who are already sort of in a position to have to be asking questions about their identity and are in a position to have to be sort of accepting themselves as outside of the mainstream in a lot of ways. If you are a, white, able-bodied, cisgendered, heterosexual male, your interest or ability in identifying as asexual is going to come at a much greater cost than if you are somebody who is, for instance, an autistic female who already has had to kind of ask all these questions about not fitting into the societal mold, who's already had to deconstruct some of these notions. And so we're going to see a lot more self-report, is what I'm really getting at, is that people are much more likely to talk about these things with others as well as just with themselves and acknowledge them in themselves than somebody who is in a different part of the spectrum or is having a different experience. But it's definitely not an overwhelming statistical difference between people who are assigned male at birth and people who are assigned female at birth identifying as asexual.
Yeah, if I may add one thing, Bill, I think this puts you in a very good position right now because while Christy is here telling you about people who are looking into their own understanding of themselves, you have the opportunity to do the same thing. And I would argue that you have a responsibility to do that, maybe looking into why these things might make you mad or angry. Again, no fault of yours, but I think the responsibility now lies on you to take that same approach that people are taking when they have to, re-examine who they are. Do I align with who society tells me? And maybe, kind of just maybe craft a new understanding and not get so angry when it comes to understanding people who are not like yourself.
I also want to throw in and forgive me, I was looking something up, so if I repeat anything either of you said, please, forgive me. I don't want to be a jerk, but Bill, while we were sitting here, I was just quickly Googling resources for learning about specifically asexual people and aromantic people as well. PFLAG here has a great list of organizations, books, and whatnot. They have an ACE and ARO resource page. The organizations that they recommend are the Asexuality Visibility and Education Network, the ACE and ARO Advocacy Project, the Aromantic Spectrum Union for Recognition, Education, and Advocacy, ACEs and AROs. They've got a ton of organizations here. They've got some books. They've got a bunch of research and studies published here. They've got descriptions of what is aromanticism, what is asexuality. Here's the International Day of Recognition. But they've got a bunch of stuff here. So I will link this and put it in the chat for this show right now. I don't know whose YouTube we're logged into on this computer, but somebody's gonna see this. There we go. So that's there now from ACA Pilot, I guess. So check that out. And also, I think it's really important to take this not only as an opportunity to learn about this, but we live in a very, very heteronormative and cis-focused society, and very few people take the time and opportunity to actually explore their own sexuality and their own gender. And just, I'm not saying anything about you, I don't know you, but like maybe that kind of response also stems from something within yourself that you might want to ask some questions about. Maybe you want to sit down and just ask yourself what you like and explore some options and just kind of think really hard about who you are and what you want to do, and maybe look into things that you hadn't thought were options before, and maybe you'll learn something about yourself as well. Or maybe you won't, and then that is also learning a thing. Maybe the fact that you didn't learn anything from that exploration tells you more about what you already knew, and that's also good info. I just think this is a great opportunity to explore in lots and lots and lots of ways, Bill.
Are those episodes of secular sexuality still available, or have they?
Yeah, they are indeed. I was actually taking a look. One episode in particular that I was very, very proud of, we did with my friend Miss O'Kist and Vila Bianca. It was episode 728. Aces with Miss O'Kiss was the episode title. Hopefully that's everything that you need to be able to search that out. I was deeply, deeply proud of that conversation, and I hope that it will help you to hear sort of a firsthand experience, as well as from advocates and people who are really invested in these issues.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot.
I want to make a complaint real quick. The ACA crew gave you guys both keyboards, and it looks like I don't know how to use a computer. I'm not that dumb. So next time, equip me so I can keep up.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Bill, we really do appreciate you calling, you being curious, you working to better understand the world around you and the people in it. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we walk out the door?
No, I don't think so. Thanks,
All right.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Will you take care? Thank
Bill.
you so much. Yeah, I really don't want to be constantly sort of like, patriarchy, and bringing every conversation back to that notion, especially when it's just sort of a straightforward, like, hey, here's this like sex thing that exists that I'm curious about. I also really resonate with an idea that Dan Savage pointed out, that homophobia is really just sexism's like creepy little brother. And I think we can look at, maybe fear of people who are bisexual, or just misunderstandings around asexuality and some of these other things through a very similar lens. A lot of it does have to do with sort of maintaining a status quo in a lot of different ways.
I think, it's fair to say, you don't want to have to link everything back to the patriarchy, link everything back to homophobia, link everything, because I know we've surely upset quite a few people in the comments, like, oh, this woke stuff again.
Sure.
But I think the fact that you can so easily make that connection kind of speaks to how important it is to do that. Like the fact that it is that influential in so many things. Kind of, it begs you to then grapple with that and address it and see where it is. And I love that quote and that idea, because you see that all the time. I've talked a bunch about how people today are blending homophobia and sexism into the diarrhea martini that is transphobia. Like that's
fair.
Just it's all these just stacking and building the shittiest Lego blocks possible to make new horrible towers. That's so many problems, y'all. And once you start seeing it, you can't stop seeing it, and it will make you an activist if you weren't
It will make
already
you an
one,
activist,
to just
fair to
learn
say.
how deep-seated these issues are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, are you all ready to jump into another one? Speak to Dalen in Virginia.
I was a born-ready girl.
All right, let's do it. We're talking a little bit about some of that passion and activism. Dalen, what can you tell us?
Yeah, so years ago, I left Christianity, and actually, Forrest, your channel really helped me do that,
Awesome.
which was cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I was a Christian missionary for years, and I would travel around telling people about Jesus. And one day, I got sick and tired of hearing all the strawmen. I would hear preachers talk about atheists, right? And I was like, well, I doubt anyone actually believes what we're saying atheists believe. So I started studying into it, started watching Forrest Valkai and Emma Throne and all of these other different people, right? And learned that atheists actually make a lot more sense than Christians. And through a lot of studying and a lot of years, I ended up leaving it. At first, I was very angry about all the time wasted and all this other BS stuff. But now that it's been a few years, I've started having conversations with Christians again and started talking with them again. And I've noticed that the same stuff that led me away from Christianity is still like going on, obviously, right? All the straw men and all the assumptions and all of this stuff. And now I get really angry because I'm like, well, you say I'm only an atheist because I've never read the Bible, but I have read the Bible many times. And that's what led me away, right? Like you say atheists believe everything came from nothing, but we don't believe that, you know? And so I'm just wondering, like, how can I have respectful, kind conversations with people, explain that, you know, not every atheist views the world the same way, and explain in such a way that's that I don't get angry, that I'm no longer like getting angry with them and stuff, and actually being productive in talking with people. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Jimmy, you want to jump on that to start?
Sure, absolutely. You know, I understand the anger, and I don't know that it ever really goes away. I think in my own experience, you know, I came out and was very angry because I realized maybe I was told a lie, and maybe not even on purpose. You know, it's just kind of something that happens generationally. This perpetual belief system is just installed over and over, and I just was one iteration of that. And so that anger is definitely understandable. And I just think that understanding that cycle and understanding where people come from will make it easier to be able to communicate. Understanding is very important to communication, okay? And to have an effective communication, knowing what you're communicating about, I think is going to lay the groundwork for that to be easier. People have, we talked about it a little bit earlier, or at least the hosts that were on earlier, we have a survival instinct to want to carry on, right? We have comforts that come from religion. We have this idea that we can stick around for a little longer, rekindle old relationships that we lost. And that's a very powerful thing to let go of. So you, being somebody who were there, should just be able to take that in and, you know, kind of synthesize it and use it to strengthen your communication with people that you're trying to make your point with. And I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, I would say like something that I find really resonates when I'm talking to a religious person that I really care about and I want to like establish a connection with. It helps to kind of pass on that emotion a little bit and let them feel, rather than just sitting with it in yourself and you're the only one now who has to be calm and collected and rational the whole time, and you have to contain. If you know, I have had religious people say to me when they find out I'm an atheist, they're like, "Oh, well, I guess you're not as good of a person as I thought you were," or "I guess you're not as smart as I thought you were." Those are things that people who care about me have said to me, and it's just okay. So now I'm going to say that back to you. And I want you to just feel it for a second. Oh, you're a Christian? I guess you're not as smart as I thought you were. Do you think that you're going to respond the way that you assume I'm going to respond in this way? Kind of sharing that emotion for a minute. I had somebody who's close to me tell me when they had first started knowing me, like, oh, it's okay. God's going to bring you to your knees and take away everything you have, and then you'll know. Okay. You're going to lose everything you have and be brought to your knees by suffering, and then you'll understand there's no God. Do you feel good about that statement? And especially if I was proposing some other God, would you feel good about that statement, that this thing that's in control of you is going to hurt you very badly to make you obey and listen like this? Is that doing to you what you assume you're doing to me? No. And so kind of sharing that emotion a little bit, I find is really helpful when you're in a serious conversation. If it's something like this, where we're strangers talking over the interwebs weirdly, maybe not. But especially if it's somebody that you care about, or somebody that cares about you, and somebody that you're really trying to get through to, helping them to understand that you're not just being contrarian, and you didn't just decide on this, but in fact, you have an incredibly common deconstruction story. I was looking for reasons to prove God, couldn't find any, my faith fell apart. I was looking for reasons to disprove these atheists and to get them and to show them. Turns out their arguments made a lot of sense. My faith fell apart. I was looking for reasons to show that evolution isn't true, that the earth is actually young, that all these things, and actually the science checked out, and my faith, that this is something that we hear all the time. And believers who are used to arguing against straw men of atheists who are just this grumpy old goat that woke up in the morning, decided not to get out of bed on Sunday, and hates babies. And that guy just wanted to be an atheist today because he's just so mean. Like, having that actually be an experience that you can share, and having the conversation be one that isn't so one-sided, especially not on your responsibility to be the adult in the room, I think is really productive. I know that was a lot for a very simple conversation, but those are things that I just work with these things, you know.
Yeah, Dalen, if I may, I want to kind of build on something that that Forrest said, which is that I think people sort of watch these shows where we are part of a educational nonprofit organization, and we have these conversations with people who are like watching the show and calling into the show, and then they take that model and want to maybe bring it home with them on some level. Everybody wants to like hang up on someone's ass, and everybody wants to sort of be snappy in that way. And I think it's really important to remind yourself that there's really no value in trying to teach anybody something that they don't want to learn. You know, that's something I definitely see in my clinical work as a therapist. It's something I see as the parent of a teenager. Like, it's just no fun. There's no value in trying to teach somebody something that they're not curious to ask questions about or interested in learning from you. And I hope that you don't feel this sort of like burden to evangelize in that way. Yeah.
I appreciate. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, really, I guess I just wanted to ask sort of where the rub is for you on all of this. I mean, I certainly can relate and recognize some of the discomfort or challenges of being an out atheist in sort of like a nominally Christian world and all of those kinds of things. But is there a particular relationship, a particular environment? I mean, where are you running into trouble, or what feels difficult about the way you're living your life right now when it comes to some of these conversations?
That is a really good question. So I think one of it is I don't think I'll ever be able to tell my parents. I mean, Forrest has mentioned not telling his mother-in-law because of it would scare her and make her uncomfortable, right? And things like that. So I kind of feel the same way with my own mom. I'll never be able to tell her that I've left Christianity. But I think the bigger one than even that one, that's the first one that came to mind. But the society I'm part of is the military. I'm in the military currently, and
so am I.
It is just like an assumption. Go ahead. Whoever was trying to.
No, I just wanted to let you know that I am as well. So if you have anything that you want, and I forgive me for interrupting, but if you have anything that's military related as far as religion goes, I'd be happy to speak to that too. But please continue.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, you're Army, right?
No, I am. I really would rather not get into specifics, but
okay,
you can continue your point.
Don't. Yeah, I understand. But I work in the military, and it's highly religious where I'm at. The assumption is that you are religious a lot of the time, or at least it feels that way to me. And working in a job where it's so essential for us to trust each other because of the type of work that I do in the military, it can sometimes cause strain on that trust when people find out that I am an atheist. And so, you know, these are kind of the things that I run into quite often, you know.
Yeah, so can I speak with my experience on that, if you don't mind?
Please go ahead.
I understand those fears and I understand those concerns, but I have to say that in my experience, they have largely not been true. I am able to, from my own, from my own point of view, I am able to get along and accomplish missions and execute tasks on a daily basis with people who are a lot different from me. When it comes down to it, having each other's back is really important, and I think that. And barring some specific incidents where you may have trouble with one individual, I think largely your fear, your concerns are probably going to be unfounded or maybe proven incorrect.
Okay.
Because basically, I think everybody's there for the same reason. Everybody typically has the same intent, and them doing well, the team doing well, relies on you doing well. And if you're able to get along with them, I think you're largely going to find that they're able to get along with you. I have been an out atheist for 15 years, and I've been in the military for 15 years. And I have some great friends that don't feel anything like I do when it comes to religion, but are just as hardworking and have very similar values. So don't be afraid to be yourself, but also if you're respectful, you usually get that back, and then you guys can work together seamlessly.
Okay. I appreciate that, and perhaps my fears are unfounded in this area.
What I don't know, you guys might know this. There's like maybe some saying or something like all of the worries that we have are non-existent or something like that, or
The worst things never happened.
Right, exactly. You could drive yourself crazy coming up with scenarios, but just go out there, be there in the moment, live in the present, and deal with it when it comes up. But yeah, that's my opinion on the military aspect. So I hope that's helpful.
Basically, mindfulness-based therapy, all in the couple of sentences. Great job, guys. And I hope that does help. There are a million things that could go wrong, and it's valid to be concerned about them. Please, by all means, be careful, appropriately so, around some of these things. But yeah, stay present in the moment. Don't drive yourself crazy over what could go wrong. Always good advice.
Maybe you can, if with your openness, you can help us dispel this rumor of no atheists and foxholes.
Yeah, I hear that one quite often, and it's kind of like what Forrest said. I've heard people tell me things like, "Oh, well, when you're out in the middle of the ocean and this and that happens, you'll be praying to someone." And I'm like, "Well, why don't you join the military, have those experiences, and then say things like that to me?"
Yeah, when I'm in my absolute weakest psychologically, when I am the most broken down emotionally, then I will finally have the insight that you think I should have been carrying all along. That's a great sales
logic
pitch.
Will really break through.
Excellent thinking. But thank you so much for your bravery and even just asking these questions, sharing your story with us at all today, Dalen.
Thanks for the
thank you
service.
for what you guys have said. I really do appreciate your time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. All right. Well, we've got at least one more call that I would like to try and get to. Before that, I want to take a quick moment to go over our top 5 patrons. And then if the studio would like to get screenshot number 10 ready for us, we've got a top shelf comment I'd really like to run by you guys. But first, our top 5 patrons this week are Oops, all singularity in the number 1 spot. Number 2, Devor Valjean. 3, Dingleberry Jackson. 4, Helvetti. And 5, Left in the Leaves. I'm getting better at that each week.
I love how many of those names I hear on repeat.
Right? Yeah.
I've heard some of those a few times. It's just so cool to see that these people are just like in the community.
Sticking with it, yeah.
Yeah.
Our honorable mention this week is going to be Stephen McDougall.
Do better, Stephen.
Dougal? Yeah, get in that top 5. Thank you to everyone, really, who does contribute on Patreon and who helps support the mission of the ACA. You can join us and do more at tiny.cc/PatreonTH. And then, if I may, can we get screenshot number 10 up on the screen? I wanted to run this by Forrest.
Oh, flip.
So the comment that we get, as we get so many wonderful comments.
Put me over Jimmy Jr.
You are. They need
two.
Is that the same shirt? Yes.
Well, okay, I didn't mean to call Forrest out for only having the one good shirt to wear on air. But the comment in response to something Forrest has said, LOL, he just said the strata shows how long by the layers. LOL,
What?
Look, try this experiment. Take a mason jar and fill it with dirt, little rocks, sand, and water.
Oh.
Now swirl it around and then let it sit flat on the ground.
Yeah.
Give it 5 minutes and pick it up and look. You will see layers of strata, and it didn't even take millions of years. It took 5 minutes.
Gotcha.
I want to give you a chance live on air, Forrest, to try and defend yourself since your life's work has just been proven a waste.
Yeah. So in the mason jar that is Earth, that got swirled at some point, How did the big rocks get on top sometimes, dude? How is it that when we look at the layer of strata, they're not organized by density? How do you account for certain layers having certain chemicals in them? Why do all of the oxides just so happen to fall after the point that we just magically think as after the great oxidization catastrophe? What do you think's going on there? Have you actually thought about what you wrote before you wrote it? Like, that's the big thing. No, I'm not. You know what? It's crazy. My faith in Darwinism is keeping me from believing that this commenter actually understands how geology works.
All right. Well, I do appreciate you taking that time to defend your honor and the honor of this fine organization.
I've never seen that comment before. I wish I'd had more prepared, but like seriously, like that's not how strata work. That's not how stratification works. Look up Steno's laws, y'all. Just look up Steno's laws. That's it. If I could offer any advice to the people who watch this show, learn Steno's law and also flossing. Flossing is also important.
Those are two important ones. Yeah,
yes.
Love yourself and one another. Floss. Steno's laws.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Well, would y'all like to try and slip in at least one more call, and then maybe we'll get some lunch here?
I'm super down with it. I'm disappointed in the fact that in the chat poll, 11% of the people who answered the poll said that they don't believe in evolution and they will call in. That's 11% of all Americans, and that many millions of people lied to us.
Nobody called. Nobody called to talk about evolution.
Oh.
But we do have a interesting question about viruses and life on Earth from Jim in Ohio. Jim, tell us what you're thinking about.
Hi. First of all, I'm 74 years old and I'm a lifelong atheist. I'm not a scientist or a science student. I just wanted to put that in so I'm not talking like a professional.
Sure.
Well, about a year ago, I came across a couple of YouTube channels. One is called SciShow, SCINShow, and then Seeker. And they did a couple of videos like, are viruses alive? And one of them, I think one was SciShow, started out about how even scientists sometimes have trouble about what defines life, because some organisms that seem to show signs of life are still considered non-living, and vice versa. And viruses seem to be like that. You know, some points are considered non-living, so I guess when they attach to a cell or something, then they're considered living. And they asked the rhetorical question, how can you kill something, killing viruses? How can you kill something that's not alive? So I just wondered, religious people claim that life could only start with a creator. And I was wondering, because of Forrest's background in biology and evolution, if viruses could be that link. I mean, going from, if maybe doing evolution, non-living viruses and living viruses, maybe they bridge that gap between non-living evolving into living organisms.
How much time do we have left in the show?
No, I know we could be here for a long time. I mean, I'm interested in even the seemingly straightforward question of, is a virus alive?
Yeah.
But what can you give me?
So we'll start. There's a lot there, dude. There's a lot there. So we'll start with the why viruses aren't technically alive. Here's breaking news for you coming from a biology boy over here. We don't know what the fuck life is. We don't have a definition for life. What we have instead of a definition is a set of qualifications that we use to define whether or not something is actually living. There's 7 of them.
Yeah, that's what they said, that they don't have a... Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, you're just fine. There's
what
7.
They read into that they don't have a definition for life.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's 7 qualifications that make things alive: form and function, order, growth and development, energy, conversion, reproduction, evolution. Like it goes on and on like this. Responses to I already did 5, and I'm going to be upset if I don't do the other 2. Order, form and function, growth and development. Energy conversion, reproduction, evolution, response to stimuli. Those are the 7. And you notice a couple of those aren't always applicable. At least 2 of those don't make it. Like reproduction, does that mean that you're not alive, you don't have kids? No, it's just kind of a generality. And evolution doesn't happen to individuals, it happens to populations. So what the fuck is that, right? So, like, we have these constructs of what life is. Not every living thing does all of them. Some of them, you have to have groups of living things. With viruses, they do like 3. They evolve real good. They have form and function, and they have structure. They don't convert energy. They don't really technically respond to stimuli, but I guess if you kind of stretch your imagination a little bit, they do, but it's not like the same that you would think about anything. It's weird, man. And so they don't do all the things that we say living things do, and the thing about viruses is that they do not give a shit what we think about them, and they're doing their thing all the time. So that's why they're not technically considered alive, is because they don't fit into our not even classification, but qualification system for what life is. And that is just one of the many examples of how science actually works. Science isn't a big book of knowledge. Science is just a bunch of assholes looking out at nature, seeing some patterns and drawing boxes around the patterns. That doesn't mean that the boxes are real, and it certainly doesn't mean that the patterns are real. With that all being said, yes, viruses do factor into evolution and the history of life. Great example are endogenous retroviruses, which are still present in our DNA today. A retrovirus is a type of virus, a class 6 virus, that implements its double-stranded DNA into its host DNA using an enzyme called reverse transcriptase, and that's how things like HIV work. Horrifying. And there's been a lot of those over the history of life on this planet, and in your DNA, you still got several of sequences in your DNA that aren't yours, that are old retroviral sequences that your body has just learned to turn off so you don't die weirdly. And those play a huge part of our evolutionary history. Look up the history of placentas, y'all. That's what you're talking about there. But as far as like a virus interacting with a different thing that isn't a virus and making a new thing that is alive, that's a bit of a stretch. But it's weird how not far off that concept is, considering other things like, for example, endosymbiosis, where you have one organism eating another organism and then not digesting it, and that other organism just lives inside the first organism and does stuff, and they're mutually benefited. And that's where mitochondria and chloroplasts come from, y'all. So it's not like as crazy as what you said may sound. I promise life has already done crazier things. And yes, all of that is a really important thought experiment, not only for what life is, but how it works and how it's evolved on this planet. I could talk for a lot longer about this. I'm not gonna, because we gotta go. But like, yeah, I encourage you to check out more stuff about virology, because it will blow your mind in the weirdest of ways. Also, remember I said the retroviruses are class 6 viruses. Look up class 4 viruses and why they're so frightening. Look those up.
Could you put some of that in the drop-down description so I can look them up?
Yeah.
I'm kind of slow about it, so I'm not taking a lot of it in.
I don't think many of us are taking a lot of that in.
I was really enjoying trying to ride the wave.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like, hey, I understand that concept. That's neat. Oh, wait, there's another one. Shit.
Don't get me wrong. I'm taking it in when it comes from Forrest. I am just not retaining it and regurgitating it.
You're missing out.
Can I put in one more thing real fast?
I'm going to type in, I'm just going to show everybody the Baltimore scheme of virus classification, because I think that's a great place to start. That's what I would say. Class 4 viruses include coronaviruses, and that's why I was telling everybody to look those up, because people need to. That's all. Socially, it's relevant. It's relevant in 2024. It actually is. Go on. I'm sorry. I'm rambling.
That's okay. It's interesting. I could listen to you for hours.
I don't recommend it.
Maybe you could put a couple of Maybe you could put a couple of those recommendations in the drop-down description so I can look them up.
I'm popping one in the chat right now.
Just to slip. Thank you. Guys, slip in something real fast. A story.
We're just about to wrap up today, Jim. You're going to be our last phone call, so send us out on a high note. Quickly, what's on your mind?
Okay. Well, I'm a science fiction fan, so I'm a fan of Star Trek Next Generation. And there's one episode, I'll keep it short. I don't even call what season it's in. I won't go into the background of why he's asking, but Data, the android, he goes to Dr. Beverly Crusher, and he asks her, because he's wondering about this for reasons that's too long to go into, how she defines life, how they know life. And she comes up with some criteria like you just did, and then he asks, what about fire? And she, by the way, she doesn't know why he's asking that. But he says, what about fire? And she questions the natural fire. And then well, fire grows. It feeds on energy. It reproduces, meaning it can throw off sparks and carries this of itself to create new fires.
Sure.
So reproduces. It feeds on energy. And I don't recall a reaction yet to that, but anyway, I just thought I would talk in.
Yeah, no, I equate fire and life a lot when I'm teaching because you kind of get people understanding it. Because similar to fire, life is a process. Fire isn't a thing. You can't go get a tablespoon of fire. You know what I mean? And same thing with life. You can't just have some life in a jar. It's just a chemical process. Fire is the conversion of hydrocarbons and oxygen into carbon dioxide and water. That's all it is. And similarly, life that we talk about is just the sum total of a lot of simple chemical reactions. And when the chemical reactions stop, life stops just the same way with fire. You're not killing the fire, you're stopping a chemical reaction. So when we talk about life, that's all it is. It's just the beginning and the end of chemical reactions, except there isn't really a beginning for any one of us because the chemical reactions have been relatively ongoing and self-propagating for the past 3.5 billion years. And that is nutty as fuck to think about.
Thank you for answering my question. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so
I'm
much,
glad to
Jim.
learn more about it.
I appreciate you bringing all of this up. I think it really just goes to highlight that life is messy. You know, that none of these things have like very strict, like, well, now we're coloring within the lines. It's 1 + 1 = 2. It's so much more beautiful and fascinating and complex and fucking weird than all of that. And that's true, especially when we start to descend into the particulars and look at the different diversities within our own species. God damn, I am so glad to be here with you guys today having these conversations instead of just like regurgitating the same ancient poetry and the same like fixed ideas built from a very small universe, how I spent most of my Sundays growing up. So thank you so much to this incredible community for being here and for celebrating with us this weekend. Thank you guys for being here. I want to send out all kinds of love rings to everybody, but I first want to make sure to remind people about our Talk Heathen segment this week. What's a lyric you wouldn't expect in Christian music? You can reply in the comments. Tune in at the beginning of next week. We want to say, again, all of a thank you to this incredible, good-looking audience that we've got out here. All of these wonderful people laughing at our jokes, making us sound so good. Thank you so much, everybody. To them, to y'all, to our incredible crew, really to everybody who, over the course of a year, has helped this organization to run. I just want to charge up and send out all kinds of love rings. And
we're doing this?
Yeah, however we want to get them out there. Nope. Yep. All right. We'll let the graphics department work that out. We'll do it in post, I guess.
Oh, it's Brick Fundraiser again.
Yep. Nope. Well, in any case, if you are watching the show, if you're here live, wherever else, if you don't believe, this is your community, and we appreciate you being a part of it. And if you do believe, we don't hate you. We're just not convinced.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live, Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.